Hi everyone, it's Parvez here again on the new episode of the Power Widgets Deep Dive show. And today I'm very excited to have on the show the one and only Daryl, always raising the bar, LaBar. Hey Daryl,
Yes,
thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, doing good. It's a good day.
Good.
Uh, it's
So
my
so
go ahead.
so happy to have you on the show here.
Yeah.
We've been connected for a long time. I've been following your content and stuff for ages. A big
hmm
fan of what you do and what you share. For those who may not be familiar with your kind of background, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences, your background, your specialities, what you do, how long you've been in this game, etc., and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I started doing .NET development way back in out of college, like 2006, 2007. And then in 2011, I switched over to consulting gig, and they needed someone to do CRM. I was like, I've got a friend that works in that. I'll give that a shot. And I think it took about a week and a half before I realized I had more CRM knowledge than the rest of the consulting company combined, because that wasn't really their main thing. But I liked it. It was fun. I kept on working on it, and it was, I mean, it was just when we transitioned over to the SDK that we still use today, at least the endpoints, at least the interfaces, at least. And so that was a lot of work to transition that over. And as a part of that, I really got into the community because there was all these other people that were actually working in the same thing I was working in, on a platform, which I didn't have before when I was doing custom dev. And so that's what got me into writing the tool or the plugin base class for the XrmToolBox. And then early bond generator came as a part of that. And a couple other tools, the toolbox, did a whole bunch of unit testing work as well. Jordan Montañez, much more famous fake XRM Easy. I developed my own about the same exact time he did. And then I was like, oh, who is this guy? He's from Spain.
Yeah,
This is cool. Also extremely tall. Didn't realize that till I met him in person. But yeah, I'm like, oh, we got the same thing. So yeah, it's been just all these little things I just find to do, things I try to share that knowledge as well, um, for my own feeble attempt at remembering things, as well as I would love to walk into a gig and have them using most of the stuff that I use and not have to worry about stuff or not have to wonder how stuff works. But uh, so I've been working since 2011. I've yet to have that happen. So maybe someday it will. Who knows? But so far, no. It's been a joy to do, and it's been something fun to kind of figure out and to work on. So yeah.
excellent. No, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into early band generator,
Mm-hmm.
so Daryl, I know of some customers even today, even in the age of coding agents and code generation, etc. They they really fear code. I've seen you develop plugins in a 45-minute conference session, and plugins we're talking about not just throwaway prototypes, we're talking about something that could be production ready, fully unit tested, nicely constructed, easy to maintain and support. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so, what would you say to customers of that nature who are even afraid of code, even in this day and age?
I think there's even a less of a reason to be afraid of code now because so either it never worked, which that means you didn't test it very good, or it works just fine, and at some point in time you may need to upgrade it or change it. And with the AI tools at our disposal, it's even easier to do that now.
Yeah,
One of the cooler sessions I was in recently was a Python programming competition for the snake game, where the snakes eat each other and stuff. I have never done Python once in my life.
yeah,
They had a basic game that all it would do was just go find the nearest food. That was all it would do. And so, just have the have the AI go and do it for you. And I'll do it this way, do it that way, change this. I never once looked at the code, and I basically kind of got something that I needed to have working fairly quickly in about 20, 30
yeah,
minutes. So,
yeah,
and so yeah, it doesn't take. It used to be guys like me, anyone like me, guys or girls like me that had all this experience in order to be able to implement something in that time and make it secure and efficient and tested. But now it's even easier to do that. So yeah, I think there's less of a reason to be afraid now than there ever has been.
yeah, 100%, 100%. That's really good. People say you eat plugins for breakfast, but I went a bit further and say you eat plugins for breakfast, lunch, and dinner as well, because you just turn these things out so quickly, right?
Oh. Do people say I do that, or is that just like a
Yeah,
phrase? I've never
I think
heard that
somebody.
I eat plugins for breakfast.
I'm probably paraphrasing a bit. I think that somebody posted it after seeing that session. I
Okay.
think it was PPC last year when you built fully
Oh.
tested plugin and really cool in 45, 50 minutes. So yeah, that was amazing.
Mm,
Anyway, yeah, let's get into the early band generator.
yeah.
Talk to us about your journey in creating this. What was the story, the inspiration behind it, and how do you get it to where it is today?
Yeah. So first getting started in the platform, I hated having all these magic strings and not knowing what the actual attribute type was, and then just the whole idea if it's not in there, you get a null exception, and then oh well, there's this get attribute value thing, but then you have to like typecast it, and it's just it feels clunky, it feels ugly. You don't know you have an issue till you actually deploy, or unless you actually do unit testing. And so there's all these reasons I didn't like that. But immediately when I found out about the CRM service util back in the day, I was like, oh, this is great. I love this. And so I immediately started using that. And it's kind of funny how we keep on going full circle on things so it's a exe, right? It's on the command line. Well, I don't like doing that because I don't like seeing all the different options and exploring and that kind of stuff. It's just not nearly as beneficial for that kind of stuff. So what do? I put a UI on top of it. And then also, hey, one of the big things it never did at first was option sets. It wouldn't create those as enums, and so like you had no way of like typing that, and so that was a really annoying thing. And somebody did a blog post on it. I don't know who it was, but all right, this is how you extend it because Microsoft did a good job at actually it may have been Shane MacArthur too that did it when he originally created it, I think. That did a good job of making it extendable and being able to have your own interfaces to go in and manipulate the DOM and create all that stuff. So that being said, that was kind of the getting started part of it is, hey, let me take this and let me create all the UI on it. That way I can know all the features, and if I go to different clients, they can do that. And then, hey, if anyone else wants to use it, they can use it and go from there. So yeah, that was the initial baby way back in Codeplex back in the day.
Nice, cool. Yeah, all right.
Mhm.
I think that's enough intros. Let's jump into a full
Yeah,
demo then. So please take over the screen share. Show us the basically how do people get started
yeah,
with it, the simplest use cases, and then working their way up
yeah.
into the more advanced any configuration options, and then we go a bit deeper into your design thinking and your architectural choices
And create
in
that.
building this as well.
Yeah. So first thing to note, this here is the early bound generator V2. V2 meaning that it actually uses the pack CLI as the background, as the backend thing to do the actual connection to Dataverse and talking and configuring and all that kind of stuff. So it uses that. The pack CLI is basically a rewrite of the CRM service util from back in the day into that thing. So it was the primarily huge thing Microsoft did is they actually filtered the metadata that got returned. Before, it would just grab all your metadata, and if you're on a large implementation with lots of different metadata tables and stuff like that, it could take 2, 3, 4 minutes for that metadata to return. If you needed like 2 tables, which is really annoying. So yeah, if you're using CRM service, the early bound generator, the first version, don't use that. Use a new version if you can. And yeah, so I'll start with that. So you may find V1 and V2, or actually, I don't think it's in V1. It's just early bound generator, and then we have early bound generator V2. That's what to look at. So first thing to note is we do have one big giant button. This is the magic generate button, which is good. Hey, this is where I want to go. But the main part that we need to look at here is the settings path. That's the one that everything's kind of driven off of. So all these settings here are stored in this XML file in our settings path here. So I don't think anybody codes by themselves anymore, but if you are, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But this was designed to be used on a team where anybody on the team would be able to make a config change. Hey, I'm going to add in this additional table. Hey, I want to add this additional capitalization rule, and it would go through and utilize that, and everyone would generate the same exact early bound types every single time. So that's the key things. Hey, this is always stored in here. Whenever you generate, that gets updated, so that way you're always going up to date. And ideally, you're putting this in your actual source control repository with the early bound entities. That's why even the like paths for the stuff is always specified via that file and location of that file. So that's where everything kind of goes off of. So that's the design of it and all that kind of fun stuff. So you have the ability to reset to the default settings, which is great. refresh. If for some reason you've updated the XML locally, if you want to open up a new file, you could do that. It does get tied to your connection. So if you've got more than one client, and then you don't have to worry about, oh, I accidentally generated the settings with this one and I'm using the wrong namespace or whatever, it'll keep track of that for you, which is nice. But you can open up your own settings file and then save it if you want to save it as, and then save back to the settings file if you want to manually do that. So that's the main part here to look at. In the actual settings here, we have global, things that apply to everything, things that apply to entities, things apply to option sets, things apply to messages, which is our API ones. Metadata, just what version are you in? And then if you have your own extensions that you want to write, so these are all mine extensions. If you have your own, you can basically inherit from mine and then make whatever you want to make. And as long as you inherit from mine, so it runs the same stuff that I'm expecting to be there, you can configure it however you'd like. Maybe you don't like the way I do this, or maybe you want to add another implementation that I say, no, I'm not going to do that. You could do that. And then finally, the debug menu is here. If if you have an issue and you need to submit something to me, you can say, hey, I want to serialize this metadata. And if you change that to true, it'll take your metadata that gets generated from the PAC CLI, and then we'll save that. And then you can upload that to me, and I can run that serialized metadata without a connection to your system at all, and be able to go through and debug to see what's going on here. Because there are just so many options. The idea, I'm going to test every single option, just isn't possible. It's kind of like trying to predict the I don't know how much you're into college basketball in the U.S., but the NCAA bracket, everyone tries to figure out who's going to win. There's so many options. You just can't predict it all. No one's ever gotten a perfect bracket ever, nor probably will ever anybody get one, just because there's so many possibilities. So same thing with this. It's kind of hard to do that. So it's very helpful for that. But the main things to be looking at is definitely want to be looking at your entity whitelist, which is your list of entities that you want to actually generate. So in this case, I'm generating these. You can add more, you can remove more, you can search by name, by solution, by publisher, and all that kind of fun stuff. So special thanks to Jonas for going through and actually adding a lot of the search stuff. I just kind of dealt with it and I was like, I don't know how to do that. He went in and he's like, it's annoying. Here, I fixed it for you. So the late bound guy himself made my tool better. There's a blacklist and a Ray expression blacklist as well. It isn't nearly, I don't think it's as helpful. It's just the plain old whitelist. You've got stuff for your namespaces. You've got a lot of options here for I'm really obsessive on capitalization, trying to get it to look nice. So by default, the PAC CLI doesn't go through and attempt to capitalize anything correctly. It just goes whatever is set up as the actual schema name. And that's why I was always super annoyed when people would always lowercase all their schema names. I'm like, well, then I don't get any good IntelliSense. And yes. So, but this does have the feature to be able to go through and actually attempt to figure out the words and then capitalize the words correctly. And then if you ever needed to override something, you can put in here and say, hey, when you take this string of words, this is the capitalization I want you to actually use for that. So you could do that. You can also do custom words in the dictionary as well to say, hey, this is a word I want you to treat as a word. So if you've got it in 15 different places, you don't have to custom enter in each one. You say, hey, this 5-letter acronym is actually just treated as a word, or whatever you happen to do. So anyway, so that's kind of the overall settings there. You can search for whatever settings you want to do. Hey, what's related to the option sets? Back in the day, everything was created in one giant file. Visual Studio cried uncle all the time because it was too big to open. And actually, there's actually people on the Microsoft team that were complaining to the Dataverse side of the fence. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we are not going to get Visual Studio to load your 200 meg whatever dex file just because you want us to split it up in other files. So we had that. That's about it. You can whitelist your messages as well. Features for deprecating here. So if you wanted to, if you mark, sometimes you might put like a ZZZ in front of your option set or in front of your attribute, and you say, hey, you don't want to use this. Well, that you can automatically add that to this, and it'll go through and mark it as obsolete in your C# code. So oh, hey, I'm using this here. I need to move off of it or whatever. Because I think we've all been on things where they've updated a display name to don't customer name don't use, and then there's customer name and number, use that one. Well, you don't know that when you're coding, but if it's obsoleted, then you do.
So Daryl, there's so many options here.
Yes.
So how many of these are actual options that are out of the box as part of the model builder, and how many are extensions or kind of enhancements that you've added to it?
I really would have a hard time explaining that outside of the fact that I don't think there's much that you get in the out of the box. Out of the box now in the Pack CLI, you do have the ability to specify multiple files. It does handle the option sets correctly as far as creating it as enum. There are bugs with the out of the box. That's one thing that I've been trying to work on Microsoft. Say, hey, I can fix it in my tool, or I can fix it in the Pack CLI. And with all the AI going crazy, they haven't been able to prioritize that as much as I would prefer. But whatever, I can fix it in my tool instead. But so there are some bugs in their tool that I don't have in mine. The ability to filter to specific entities is listed in there as well. And actually, actually, let's go ahead and open that folder. I'll show you just a couple examples here. So, this is the XML folder that we actually have. But if I go ahead and look at that folder, we will see in here, we also have a builder settings.json. So in here, in this thing, we actually have a list of what is out of the box versus what's not out of the box.
Right.
So I store all mine in XML as a legacy from the original one, and they decided to create everything in JSON. So then I transfer everything from the XML to the JSON and then run the actual tool and run it as is. So all the stuff in here is stuff that would be out of the box. So you can specify what your providers are you want to use, your namespace, filters for the names, filters for the entities. If you want to emit the entity type codes, field classes, virtual attributes, you can. I think those are all out of the box. And then everything here in the DLB model builder obviously is stuff that's specific to the early bound generator. So and we have what is that? Almost 30 different options. So if they were just all true false, you've got, 30 squared? Is that what it is? I don't know with math. Or is it 2 to the 30th power? I don't know. There's a lot of different options of how you can combine all those things. So anyway, yes. So that kind of gives a good idea. There's a lot more customization available in the early bound generator than is what is available out of box. So, all right. But so that's the high level view. If you're looking for something, searching is probably the best way to go. Try to find what you're looking for. I'm so glad you added that one, because even I'm like, what is this one in? I can't remember sometimes. So anyway, so that's helpful. But that is what it is out of the box. Now, I will also say, this is something that I think people don't think about or realize, is I designed this to be completely separate from the XrmToolBox. So does it exist in it? Yes. But there is a NuGet package that is the API, or the bound generator API, that doesn't have any dependencies to Windows, to the XrmToolBox and that kind of stuff. So that way you could run that in your actual pipelines. So, trying to come up with the settings file in the JSON, you'd have to manually edit that yourself. Or what I would think you would do is you would edit it with the early bound generator and save that JSON off and check that in and do your pipeline and whatever. But yeah, there's no reason that you can't just run this as a command line as a part of your pipeline and just run up the pack, create your connection for the Pack CLI and then run your gen with it, and you're good to go. Because when you actually generate it, I think it actually spits out what the actual code is. So this is the command line right here: pack model builder, build, output, and then the settings file. Those are kind of all it is. So all that's just a short little thing, and then that could run in your pipeline or wherever you want to run it. If you want to run it manually all the time, good, go ahead, do that. Skip the tool, skip the UI. So, which is maybe helpful for all of our AI overlords too. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So don't feel like hey, I don't want to use this because now I can't have AI do it, or I can't have it as part of my pipeline or whatever. So anyway, yes. So that is the tool in a nutshell. So let us start talking about some of the architecture. Unless there's something else you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think let's go for that. But at some stage, if you could show us like the output that the tool produces as well, as in, just an example of what it looks like and what people can expect, and then how to use that potentially afterwards.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So we have our entities or our tables, messages. So these are going to be the custom API messages or the out-of-the-box Microsoft ones. And then our option sets. It creates these 3 folders. Generally, that's within your actual project file itself. So this was, did I delete everything? But I guess I deleted everything but the actual generation of that from Power Platform Conference. But in the entities, you can see, let's open the contact itself. And we can go ahead and take a look at that one. And actually, why don't I open this in something that's actually nicer, like, I don't know, VS Code. Give me a sec. Alrighty. Oop. I want a folder higher. Open the folder, try it one more time. And there we go. Okay, so it creates a Dataverse context, which is what's used for going through and doing link to CDS, I guess, link to Dataverse. I rarely ever use this because it doesn't, you don't get compile time safety with it. Like it's still like you try to do something that's not supported and you don't know it till at runtime. So I generally don't use it myself, but there's no reason you can. Yeah, so there's that gets generated at the root. And then we also have this little option set enum class that gets generated that handles multi-set option sets and a couple other helper methods. Then outside of that is just stuff that's based on your metadata. So let's go contact. That's a easier one. You'll see, depending on configuration, you could have these in a separate file. But if it's entity specific for your option set, you'll see it listed in the top of the file here for your enum. So this is the contact account role code. We can go through all those option sets. Okay. And then the next thing, if you choose to enable it, are the fields. So that way, if you do need to use late bound, you've got the late bound with the custom bound as well. So if you need to do some fetch XML and you want to include those fields in there, you can do that and still get the idea of knowing exactly where is your file being used from in your code base. Where is that field being touched? So if you want to say, hey, can I remove this field from Dataverse? And you go, well, let me go check my plugin. You can go and check to see, oh, well, we're using this in this one fetch XML, or we're using it here in this one query for that. So those are all the field names. And then farther down, then we get the actual ID itself, the constructor, for it. And then we actually get the actual properties. Oh, we also have some of these constants as well that you can enable, so you can see what's the entity schema name, entity logical name. That one comes by default. Primary ID attribute. So if you need to utilize that in a query to say, hey, give me the contact with this ID, you don't have to wonder what that is. Helps a lot when it's a custom entity and someone named it something weird. You're like, what? And then we get the actual entities themselves. So the account ID, and then also you can have it give out the name of that value as well. So that's an option as well. What else we got here? Just every single column that's on that table gets spit out and is now early bound, so you don't have to wonder what it is or isn't. Yep. And there's even options for nullability. I don't think I have this enabled, but you can set it up so that everything has your nullable operator on it, and that way you can get null, be a little bit safer on your null type checking. So that's something I've been working on recently, just to make life a little bit easier when working with this on, let's say, not from plugin, from Azure Function, where now you can where you're utilizing that kind of feature maybe a little more often. So yep. And then same thing with the request classes here for your custom SDK or the out-of-the-box messages. You'll have a request class, and then you'll have a response class as well, which just allows you to then call that message with that parameter. Your service execute and give it that request. And then you can use it for parsing the result. And then the option set, these are anything that would be global option sets, so they wouldn't be specific to a particular table. So you'll see those listed out here. And that's it. That's what you get generated.
Cool. So it's purely the C# classes then. So it doesn't do stuff like, putting it into a project for you so it's ready to be compiled or anything like that. That's up to you to sort out, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you really, I mean, if you want to have that hand holding, you could use the Visual Studio Solution Accelerator in the XrmToolBox. Then it gives
Right.
you, and that's kind of what my 60-minute demo is on, hey, or 50-minute or 40-minute, whatever the thing is, and how do you create a plugin with unit testing is walking through that tool, where you kind of say, hey, here's what my name says to be. Hey, I don't have a solution, or hey, I do have a solution. Great, create a solution
Mhm.
for me, or whatever. Create a project for me, create unit testing for me, all that kind of fun stuff. But it's just a C# classes, and the only dependency it has would be on the SDK itself. So
Right.
there's no, it's not a difficult thing to wire up. You just say, hey, I'll put it in this folder, which happens to be in this project. And assuming that you're using the newer, SDK style projects, you don't even have to add it manually. It just automatically gets added because it's in the folder and you're good to go. So yeah.
Mhm. Cool. Nice. Nice. That's really helpful. So yeah, let's go a bit deeper then. Talk to us a little bit more about your architectural choices in terms of integrating it with the model builder
Yeah.
or in the prior version, the SVC util. How does that all work?
Yeah. So this is kind of the fun part of, I guess me being lazy, I guess. I don't know. All of my XrmToolBox tools live in a single Git repository. They probably shouldn't, but I have got some code that I'm using back and forth between some. I probably shouldn't be doing that either, but it works and so I'm happy. So I haven't worried about updating it. So if you are a code junkie or you want to point your AI tools at things, just know, hey, it's all on GitHub. It's all under the XrmToolBox tools, the DLB XrmToolBox tools GitHub repository, and you'll see in this kind of subfolder gives us all the things that are related to it. So we have the early bound generator XrmToolBox plugin itself. We have the API, which is nothing in here basically except as a project to build the NuGet packages that are needed for the API, that's not dependent at all on the XrmToolBox. We have the logic, which is where that logic will live for both of these things of like how does this actually how does this make the call to go through and generate the script and stuff. So if you give it a ionization service, we'll go through and get the right paths and do just a little bit of like logic to create that JSON file and to go ahead and call the shell out to the actual file if it needs to, or to call it directly. So actually it used to shell out, but now it doesn't. Now the Pax UI has a way to actually pass it a method that has the service already instantiated, so I don't have to do that anymore. So anyway, and then we have the actual model builder extensions itself, which is the place where all my code lives that implements interfaces that the model builder extension exposes. That's then used to update the DOM. So this was written back in the day when DOM was used a lot. It's not used nearly as much anymore. It's not been maintained as far as keeping up to date with everything you can do with C#. So you run into lots of issues where, hey, I can't actually do this. Like the Elvis operator, if you wanted to add that to it, like that's not supported in the DOM because it was way back in, I think, 2.0, 3.0.NET. So it doesn't, it never supported those things. So there's some things that you may like to do that you don't just because they're not actually supported for that. But those are all the extensions for that. And then I've got my actual unit testing for the early bound generator logic stuff. So this is where I'd go in and take your metadata and go through and run a test to actually test it. And then I've got some other tests for different providers in there as well. And then finally, we have this settings updater. And when you go through and you add in a new settings here, there's like 5 different things you kind of need to touch. You can add a file here, add a file there, add to this thing, define what the type is, and add to the JSON and all that kind of fun stuff. So every time I would go through and add a new setting, I would dork it up somehow. So this tool exists solely to go through and add a setting to there for me. So I don't have to worry about missing where it needs to go. So anyway, that's all that does is it adds a setting. So if I have a new setting I need to add, I can run that tool and be able to have it update the code base. So code writing code for me.
Nice.
Back before AI was cool to do it for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, excellent. That's really cool.
So that's the top level. I'm not sure if there's anything how much I want to dive into the actual. And this is all the actual like window form stuff, and all the different settings and the different windows for that that got added to that one. So I don't know. That's the same for any other XrmToolBox. I won't dive as much into that as I will probably just the model builder extensions. So this is the stuff where it's I've slightly evolved it over time, I guess, but it's kind of interesting how that all works. So on the actual tool itself, what it provides are custom code customization service, code generation service, code writer filter, code writer message filter, meta provider service, meta query provider service, and naming service. I think this one's new. I don't think this was on CRM service util, and that one may not have been on there as well. But most of those all are on there as well. And so that's the hooks that you get that the pack model generator will utilize when it calls things. So some things are at the highest level. So like the code generation service. So this is the iCode generation service that we're implementing. Again, I don't like having things that aren't typed well. So all these properties I've specified that are pulling from the actual settings JSON itself. So it'll go through and it'll pull in the JSON file and then expose that. And then I just have a little wrapper over here to set those settings for myself and for testing. So if I want to test this thing, I can just set the values manually in here, rather than having to deal with an actual like a JSON file. So that's primary why it's set up that way. Is I can either set the JSON file or I can set it manually through the testing tool, just settle the values and then let it run through whatever it needs to run through. So so you'll see a lot of this where we just have properties that are just wrapping the actual JSON metadata, JSON local files. There we go, Play.C objects. Yeah, so you'll see a constructor that is the constructor for creating the things. This is the one that's used by the tool. This is the one that I use when I'm doing testing. So here's the settings. I could give it nothing, or I could actually give it something. And then we have the actual implementation of, hey, what does this thing like do? So get type for attribute, for example. So this is the tool saying, hey, here's an entity metadata. Here's the attribute that I'm trying to generate. And here's my service provider to get all the services if you need to get some more services. And I don't do anything with that. I just set the service cache just for testing purposes, and then I go ahead and call the default service. So whatever's out of the box. So I don't override that at all. But if I wanted to, I could override it and change that type to be a different code generation type instead. Type for entity, type for message pair, type for option. Those are all just options that are out of the box. I don't tweak any of those. One I do tweak here is the right. The right here, we actually do a lot of different stuff here. So I guess this is just a wrapper on everything. If I go right internal. If there are existing files you want to delete, you can configure that to delete it, because maybe you want to always clear out all your files. And so that way, if you remove an entity, it'll get removed out of your project. So that's a setting for that as well. There's this fun hack. So this is like the hackiest thing that I had to do. There's certain things that I'd like to do that I have no way of doing. None of the extensions provided give you an opportunity to go through and do that.
Right.
So this hack model builder code gen hack has got sections in here that it's a decompiled version of what's in the pack CLI,
Right.
where I've gone through and customized some of the options in here to get it to work the way that I wanted it to work. So you'll see a lot of these. Here's a method name and here's the invoke for it. Well, that's the method. I just need to call this method from up above. So like this one thing is basically a copy paste of the internal write, and it calls all these private things, and so it would look really ugly to try to do reflection in this method. So I just rename it and then call the one that I'm hacking over the top of. So this does some things that are not possible otherwise without having to go through and like reread all the files and re-update all the files. This is like grabbing it when it's actually writing it. So it just makes it much more faster and efficient, stuff like that. So yes, so this is the part that ideally I would love to be able to get just be something that's done out of the box, but there's no way of doing it out of the box. So I just resorted to this. So this is the man behind the curtain hacky hack section of it. So don't, there's not a lot that does do, but it is something that is in there. If you're wondering what the heck is that, if you ever take a look at that. So, and then we have just some other things here: clean up local option sets, conditionally combine files, conditionally split message files, and update project files. So there's just some, based on some settings, we're going to do that. And a lot of, I like this sort of idea of very clean, here's my methods. And then in it, hey, if I don't need to be here, I'm going to just return. So theoretically, I'm wasting a method call. But it just looks so clean to see this rather than having 5 if statements here. So that's generally the way that I've architected that to do it that way. So yeah, so that's like the big main one for like the whole generation of stuff. And then I think this is stuff that was, I think, a carryover from the old CRM service based one that I went through and commented out because I don't need it anymore. But I'm too scared to remove it apparently. So
yeah. So that's an interesting discussion point actually, though. So when you wrote the original version, how much of it was reusable for the new version afterwards? Did you have to, is it completely rebuild, or were you able to kind of just lift and shift a lot of it?
Yeah. There was a lot of lifting and shifting that was not too terribly difficult. The interfaces themselves hadn't really changed. So I'm still implementing the same interfaces. I just had to update the references. The biggest issues were, hey, now I can pass in a CM service util. How do I do that? Oh, I need to use this JSON file. So okay, now I need to create this JSON file. So all that kind of stuff was stuff that had to be kind of new. The creating of some of the data, because basically the hardest part was taking the stuff that I think Microsoft has said, hey, we love this in the early bound generator. Let's just bring it into the CRM service, into the PAX CLI. Was going through and undoing that from my code base. Say, hey, I'm going to use Microsoft stuff and not have my own stuff there. So that was probably more work, was to go through and figure out, okay, what have they actually implemented? Does it work? Right. Can I trust it? Great. Okay, now how do I undo all those settings and make sure that when you come in and you open it up and you try to transition from the V1 to V2, that I handle that gracefully. And that's something that was kind of interesting as well, is I warn the user if they use a version that's different than somebody else's, older than someone else's. So if you and I are in the same project and you've got a newer version and you've got a new setting that doesn't exist in my version, or you got a bug fix that doesn't exist in my version, if I open it up and try to generate, it's going to give me an error right away, or not an error, a warning that says, hey, this was last generated on this version of the early bound generator. Are you sure you want to continue? You can say yes, but generally you don't want to do that. Just to make sure you're generating it the same for everybody, because then you get noisy diffs if all of a sudden, hey, now you're using a different version and it changed this and whatever. So that's the one thing that is kind of interesting in the settings. When we do the mapping for that, I can see if I can remember where that's at. Is it in the logic? I'm going to go find where the settings comes from, and then we can go ahead and find where that's being used at. Okay, so here's the extension config. Is it this thing I want? One of these things is, yeah, okay, cool. Yes. Update obsolete settings. Yeah, here's kind of where we're at here. Okay, so so when it goes through and it attempts to generate this stuff, It's going through, here's the config file. It's going to go through and get the default, which is like, hey, this is what I think you should have. This is my
Mm-hmm.
default settings. So if you want to refresh, it gives you the default settings. Um, and then I go through and remove any obsolete values. So things that, and I put in the version, hey, this was the default, replace it with this or whatever. So so if you happen to have an older version and I've changed the formatting, I had to take your config formatting and massage it into what the current formatting is. So remove stuff, I update obsolete ones. Where hey, based if it's less than this version, then hey, I need to go through and convert this. Used to be non-colon delimited to a dictionary, so I had to like update that. I updated how that works. So you'll see in here just this older stuff of all these little if statements for hey, you have to go through and do this, or hey, you got to go through and do that in order to get it to play well with the next version and to upgrade successfully. Um, and then yeah, and then I also have the default that's set here as well. So what happens if you delete a default setting? You don't have it in there at all. Then I need to make sure that I step on your null with an actual value. So this step of logic in here to go through and make sure that everything's set up and populated correctly based on what version you're coming from to what version you're going through and then all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting thing I thought. But yeah, so let's take a look at maybe one of the other things in here, which is be like the entity specific ones. So I think there's a TT. Well, let's see what the attribute constants generator is. So this attribute constants generator is a part that handles. Up when I closed my VS Code, I shouldn't have. That handles generating that static class at the top of the file. So if we go back and look at this contact stuff. Come on. This thing here, okay? So might be a good idea just to walk through and say, how does this get generated, right?
Yeah.
So if I find where this is being used at, don't care about the tests. Customize code, that's the main one here. Cool. So this is the kind of the main part that you're going to do most of the work in if you ever decided to go any editing in this, is the customize code DOM service. And in here, I follow up where it's getting called from, process entity, which is up here, customize code. So it's going to go through and generate the code DOM for you. And then it says, okay, well, this is what we've generated. You can go ahead and now customize it, manipulate it. And the code DOM is like the actual like in-memory objects of what an actual code base is. So it's type safe, compile safe, whatever. And so this is like the entry point into it of every single file gets in here and gets called to actually customize the code DOM for it. So here's the code unit, here's the services. Again, I set some service cache to go through and process the metadata or whatever. You'll see that all over the place because I don't know where it actually starts from. Generally, it just skips it, but after the first time, it skips it. Then I go through process option sets, process messages, and then loop through each of these code units to get each class in it, which would be the entities. So in here, you'll see all the different like configurations that we do. So they're actually separated out. It's not one single giant file with everything in it. So file attributes updater. We had the attribute constants generator. So that's the one we're looking at. So it's going through and if this is enabled, it calls this. Other ones actually just always get called. So if I go through and look at this thing, it's going to say, hey, customize the code DOM. It's going to have that unit in here and the services in here. Here's the fun part where all these different settings kind of interact with each other. So the only settings it uses is generate the attribute name constants and also, hey, obsolete deprecated. So if you've marked something as deprecated, or if you say, hey, I want to mark things as deprecated, this will also show up in this attribute class list as well. So that way, if you're using the late bound, you still will see, hey, this is deprecated. So that's another setting that I have to like bring in to make sure that I utilize that. So if I do have the obsolete deprecated showing up, then I need to go and actually get out of my services collection this obsolete attributes provider service. And if it doesn't exist, then it returns this one. And that gives me the list of obsolete attributes. So that's just something that's there. But basically, it looks through this entity for every entity in here. It gets all the members. If it can't find this thing, then hey, we don't actually have anything to worry about. But then it goes through and we'll add in, hey, this is the public static class. Then replacing that with, hey, now actually we have a partial class, because this is something that is actually done out of the box now and didn't used
Yeah.
to be. So that was one to go through and figure out what are they generating, what are they not generating, because I want it to be, if I go back to the contact, I want this to be a partial class in case there's something I need to edit with this or something I want to add to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that was out of the box, something I needed, but one time I was like, crap, I actually need this to be partial. So I can edit that without having to worry about the regeneration, updating it. So anyway, so that's basically going through and finding that and updating that if it needs to, going through and finding these obsolete attributes and adding the correct thing on there. And then also if I need to replace any members, going through and do that kind of stuff. So this is going through and strictly just doing text manipulation really at this point in time.
Mhm.
Naming service makes its little call here to say, hey, what is this property that's actually used, this uh, collision postfix, because that's something that isn't handled out of the box. Is what happens if you happen to have things that have the same exact name.
Yeah.
They don't, they'll collide sometimes. So that's kind of fun stuff for that. But yeah, so that's just a little section of code that will go through and update that DOM, and it'll go through and parse it and use it if it can. Other ones, like it doesn't support updating the DOM at all, and you have to go through and like actually generate the
Yeah.
you have to actually edit the actual code itself just with strings, which isn't nearly as it's way easier. It's way easier to do as far as like writing it.
Yeah.
But I guess now with AI, it's not nearly as hard to actually use the code DOM for that. So
Yeah.
anyway, so that's kind of majority of the architecture, I guess. They're
Yeah.
just how that looks. So
Yeah, no, that's very cool. I mean, there's lots of goodies in there to go and explore and learn from and take inspiration from, I guess.
mhm.
So just taking a bit of a diversion in the discussion. So originally, when Microsoft built or shared the CRM SVC util, do you know what drove them to then subsequently build a model builder? Was it something that they had to do because of old technology, or was model builder basically the same thing under the hood and just with additional bits on top of it? What was the rationale? Do you know?
I believe the main thing they wanted to do is try to consolidate all the tools that they had that were connecting to uh, Dataverse and
Right.
remove any sort of, hey, we have to go fix this bug in this one, got to fix this bug in that one. So I believe that was the primary thing, was to just consolidate that and put it all in the
Mhm.
pack CLI, so they didn't have to maintain all the different connection mechanisms and stuff like that.
Right.
So that was the primary need, and then they probably gave it to, usually tools like that were edited by Matt Barber back in the day.
Right.
And he's moving off the team or has moved off the team. Although I don't know, maybe ghosts of him show up every now and then and do some things, I feel like. But so my guess is they probably had a summer interns like, hey, we need you to go through and port this over and
Right.
here's some things to fix, because they did some things and they didn't do all the things, but some things they did
Yeah.
fix and
Yeah.
and so yeah, so that is, from my understanding of the black box of Microsoft, how that
Yeah.
came to be, or why that came
Yeah.
to
Of
be, I
course. Yeah.
guess. So
Yeah, yeah,
mhm.
cool. It's always interesting to know. So, in terms of the extensibility of these tools, like the CRM SVC util and then the model builder as well, is that public knowledge? Is that well documented, or did you have to dig deep into the headquarters at Microsoft to try and understand how that would all work?
So it it was documented fairly well, the CRM service util. And then I don't think they documented it again for the PAX CLI, but the CRM
Right.
service util documentation was still there. And
Mhm.
I had to do a lot of uh, uh, going through and taking the code, looking at the code at the back end. Oh, the code is posted online too, so it's public. So I was able to actually look at the actual code and
Right.
decompile it. That's the word I was looking for. And sometimes I decompile and see, what is it doing? Why is this set? What is this getting set? How is it reading this value? So I had to do a lot of that kind of work to kind of
Right.
figure out some of the internals of it, and especially in the
Mhm.
hacking stuff of, hey, I want
Yeah.
to do this. How do I do this?
Yeah.
And there's just, I think it was like remove the auto-generated attribute version or something or other. Like it always would show up, and it was like, well, I don't care what generated this thing. And if I
Yeah.
update it, I don't want to see all my files updated because now I'm on a new version. Like that's all handled in my config. I
Yeah.
don't want that in every single file and having all these noisy diffs. Because if you're on a different version, I'm on a different version. Now it shows up everywhere. Like it's super annoying. Like no, I don't want that. So yeah, so that was stuff that it had to go back. And I think actually, I think I surprised somebody at Microsoft once when I said, "Hey,
Right.
can you guys change this?" Like what? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is you guys provide extensions for. And like what? And I think I think they didn't. I think they were newer or something. Didn't remember. So yeah. But yeah.
That's been brilliant. I mean, just I personally, I didn't even know that the model builder was extensible, and you can actually do it in a nice way and structure the code nicely to make it understandable, make it easy to maintain. So, I mean, I've learned a lot from this. I really appreciate you sharing your insights, Daryl. I'm assuming this is open source on GitHub, right? So people can have a look at it and learn from it and potentially contribute to it if they want as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's been I'll tell you that the world the AI has been so nice as far as going through my backlog and like fixing things and just doing
Yeah.
things. But still it struggles. I don't know what it is about this repository itself, but it struggles a lot. I guess maybe there's not that many code generators out there that
Right.
that do this, so maybe it's not as quite as good at that. But like
Yeah.
there was one LinkedIn comment that I had where no, I didn't have it. Um, Jonas had it. He posted, because I was like, nice try AI, but no, this is totally wrong. Like that was my comment that I put to it because it just went off on some different tangent. So
Yeah.
um yeah, because there's just some specific some ways that that it has to handle it that won't work otherwise.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I do. Yeah, there's nothing that I do that actually hits your service, your environment, outside of that metadata query currently.
Mhm.
I did do that back in the day because there was no way for me to do that and like
Yeah.
inject that. But I believe I did see recently, oh, there is a way to go through and do this. Like I was going through, someone suggested, and I had AI work on it for a while, and then I worked on it for a while, and then I was like, this is going to be too bad. But it
Yeah.
was the to take your stage names for your processes, so your
Yeah.
workflows and stuff. I think
Yeah.
this is primarily for like BPFs, I think is what they were
Yeah.
wanting it for. But it could apply to everything. And to be able to just generate some early bound typings for all those names
Yeah.
so that you'd be able to use them if you needed to query, hey, give me this thing, give me that thing. It sounds great, but then actually when I was looking at my example org I was in, there was 1,100 processes in there. I was like, well, crap, that's a whole lot.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then like, and each one like could have the same exact name but a different like parent name. And so I was like, well,
Mhm.
crap, now I've got to like put this into do I put it in every single BPF? If I do it BPF, do I do just BPFs? Do I do the workflows? And like, you're
Yeah.
not going to want to generate all these. You're going to want to just, so then I'm going to have to elevate it to a first class citizen of,
Yeah.
hey, we need to have a whole section for this. We need to be able to specify whitelists for this because not
Yeah.
everyone's going to want it. We need to
Yeah.
be able to make sure that we know where this is generated at. And I was like,
Right.
nah, just hard code what you want. It's not that
Yeah.
big of a deal. It's no, sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. I'm done.
Yeah.
So after spending a couple hours, I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is way bigger than it should be. We're not. This is
Yeah.
not going to happen.
No.
So
But it's great that you've had so much adoption of this and getting input from the community and ideas for making it better, adding new
hmm
features, bug fixes. Did you have to do anything to get that level of engagement? How do you go about promoting this thing?
mm. I get very few. No, so the biggest thing that I've ever gotten probably is the transliteration, where I'm an English person speaking English. I don't speak anything else. I'm
Yeah.
spoiled as can be, right? I don't know any other languages. I don't know any other character sets. I don't have to care about it.
Yeah.
And someone's like, hey, this doesn't work for this language. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work? I don't understand. There's another language. And so like someone back in the day, like, hey, here's a transliteration file, and they wrote through a little logic to go through and do that. And so that's been great. And other people have submitted their own languages as well. So that's one thing. If somebody's like, hey, I've got my own language this is generating in, it's not quite right because it's it's generating weird Unicode characters that aren't fun to type in. Like there's a way that you could easily submit that and get that in there. So that's one option of somebody that actually submitted something. But a lot of stuff I get, and the beneficial stuff I get is just bugs. Hey, this doesn't work, or hey, this is causing an issue. Hey, these settings, which I never tested, don't work. Can you fix that? So that's the stuff that's helpful as well, especially now. Now that I can just get a Copilot and say, hey, go work on that make that better, and then go back and say, hey, you didn't do that right. Let me fix it. But yeah, so I don't feel like I've gotten a whole lot of help on the project itself outside of the bugs and stuff, which is fine. It's not that terribly complicated. But yeah, and the one thing I do want someone to help me on that would be awesome is it used to someone did do this. They used to went through and added logging of the config options so I could see what everyone's using. Hey, this is only used by 5% of the users. I'm going to deprecate this. Or hey, this is used by 80%. I better not get rid of this. And then that was associated to a account of mine, an Azure account for BI, and it was on my MVP license, and somehow that expired, and I never knew, and it just died. It's gone. I was like, great. So I don't have any of the files. So I don't need to back up the file. I don't even, I don't even know, the code base doesn't even, I don't even know if it even knows how to connect to it anymore. So yeah, I've never done that, and I guess that's something that I probably should have AI start on, or ideally if someone knew what they were doing, would love them to, hey, let's, here's how we log everything, and here's a dashboard that I can create in BI for you, and now everything's up and pretty, and everything looks nice, because that would take me a lot of time. So if someone has those skills, that'd be very helpful. So
cool. Are you actively maintaining a backlog of stuff you want to change or improve, or new features you want to add, anything like that, or is it just as and when things occur to you?
So I am, so if I go look at the dashboard, I got 33 open issues. Let's see how many have I closed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I was at 7 this summer. I've kind of gone through and closed. So there are some things on here. Like this is one that I'm still open that I don't know what's going on because I don't have another org to go test it in. Although Andrew Patenko set one up for me, so now I just don't want to go test it or spend the time on it. But I need someone's metadata to say this is how this is working and this is why this isn't working. But there's other ones here that this is for the attribute manager because I've got all of them in one rather than the early bound generator. So there's some that aren't in here. So so there are some things out here that I go through and let's go ahead and do this. But we're getting kind of old now. We're in 2005, some of the ones 2004, 2001, so 21, not 2005, 25. So I'm getting already 6 down. I'm already 5 years back. So as big of a thing as maybe it could have been. So, but yes, I do go through and kind of look at it. So.
But it's a testament to your efforts, right? It's pretty mature offering, and it's helping people and really, expediting writing code way before coding agents were a thing. So it's a real powerful piece. So thank you for your efforts in sharing that with the community. I think as I speak on behalf of the whole community when I say it's a real valuable asset here that you have.
Yeah.
So Daryl, thank you so much for chatting to me today. It's been amazing. I've learned so much from you, not just today, but even when we've met and had some geeking out conversations at conferences and stuff. I always enjoy a conversation with you. Yeah, it's really good. We'll share links to your socials and this project as well in the description to the video. And we'll continue to support the project as well. So thank you once again for your time and sharing your insights with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.